Yeah.
Okay.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Keziah, and I am so excited to come this Saturday for today's health talk. And today we're talking about a very interesting topic, and that is the hidden pathogens behind 80% of all diseases. So I just want to say hi to everyone before we get started, to welcome our guests. And please type in the chat where you're zooming in from, because we have people from all over the world. And I really count it as a privilege that you've chosen to spend your time with me for these next few minutes. There's so many things you could have been doing. I don't take that for granted. So thank you for being here. And please type in the chat, let me know where you're from. And even what you're hoping to get from today's session. Perhaps it's a topic that you're familiar with, or maybe it's something new. Oh, I see you, Eng. Is that correct? Eng from Singapore. Hi, Eng. Yeah, I'm here from Kenya, so that's already 2 continents. J. Michael, Texas, 3 continents. Kenya, Wangeshi, thanks for your support. Fei Chong from Singapore, welcome. What time is it in Singapore, by the way? I'm curious. Hey, Maria from New York. Hi, Lenovo from Kenya. Yeah, so we're covering all these different time zones and different countries. It's so good to be here with you. So today we're just going to talk about this briefly, and it's not really like a medical lecture. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but I just wanted to share my story and a little bit about what my experience has been, the things I've learned. Wow, 10 p.m. Thanks for making the sacrifice to be here from Asia. We really appreciate that. So I'm going to try to give you as much value as I can so that this is worth your while. And you can probably learn something today that will help you, that will help your family. Most of you are already familiar with the molecule transfer factor. So this is just like a different spin on how we can maximize the products that we already know, love, and trust, and maybe add 1 or 2 technologies that can really, really help us to optimize our health. So today's talk, again, yes, the title is about pathogens, but we're not focusing on sickness. I'm all about wellness, and the company For Life is all about thriving and doing well. So that's what we're going to put our focus on. We're not here to talk about germ theory. And anything I say here is not FDA approved. It's not approved by any 3-letter agency, but it's something that I have learned and I'd love to share. So briefly, let me tell you what I do. My name is Patricia Keziah. I live in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm a wellness consultant. I basically help families get healthy without drugs so that they can go from feeling stressed and overwhelmed to feeling thriving and connected and being able to face whatever challenge might come their way. So I use a variety of tools in my toolbox. I use bioresonance or frequency medicine. I use transferceutical science, which is what has brought all of us here. I use herbs, and I also use something called neuro-emotional release. And that helps us to just get unstuck so that we remove subconscious blocks that may be interfering with our healing. So my title for today is, I did use a statistic. I love statistics. And I said that 80% of all diseases are caused by pathogens. So this may be something new, and it's probably not something that is spoken of much in mainstream medicine. But in the field of wellness, we have come to learn that there are a lot of diseases nowadays where you hear the title, the label of the disease, this syndrome, that syndrome, even very common illnesses. And they're actually more like symptoms of something else. So when we're looking at the root cause, there's a lady called Hulda Clark. She's a scientist, and she wrote a book called The Cure for All Diseases. And this was back in, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, and you can find it on Google, Hulda Clark. And she found from her investigations that so many diseases are actually caused by underlying pathogens. And by pathogens, that's an umbrella term I'm using to speak about the animal kingdom, like tiny animal kingdom, not lions and giraffes, but the tiny, teeny little bugs that we share this planet with. And sometimes when our immunity is low, because I am speaking for the immune system company, when our immunity is low, we do get compromised a little bit and they start to make us rather uncomfortable. So first of all, I'm going to share a statistic. I love statistics, can you tell? That my husband likes to use, and it really freaks me out, but now, I'm sort of used to it. He says that for every one human being, there's 200 million insects. We are outnumbered by insects, 1 to 200 million. I know that's really gross. It's 10 p.m. in Asia. I don't want you guys to have nightmares, but anyway, we found ourselves on this planet and we do share it with other creatures, large and small. So we're not talking about insects, but we're talking about the microscopic and the small little creatures that are actually masquerading as the hidden root cause of so many diseases. So these they're basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're like the 5. Kenya, here in Kenya, we have the big 5 wildlife. In terms of disease-causing pathogens, I'm going to speak of 5 of them today. Number 1 is parasites. And for a long time, parasites were thought of being something that's only in underdeveloped countries in the third world. But recently, there's been an awakening where people realize that even in westernized countries, we are still on the same planet. And so we still have the same parasites, especially if we have pets, etc. So parasites is number 1. That's a hidden root cause of many, many illnesses. Number 2, bacteria. Number 3, mold or fungus. Number 5, viruses. And number 6, protozoa. So they vary in size, they vary in their ability to cause disease, but these are basically the ones that Hulda Clark focused on, because that is what we find even when we do bioresonance testing or frequency testing at our wellness office. We find that most clients have these, and they are the root cause behind many, many issues. And some of these issues will just blow your mind. I'll give you a story. Some of them, this is May. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. One lady, she wasn't my client, but she was a client of a naturopath who I had spoken to. His name is Dr. Saningo, and he's Kenyan of Maasai origin. So Maasai, they're nomadic people. They're very close to their traditions. They understand a lot about herbs. And he also studied in the US. That's where he practiced as a naturopath. And one day he had a client, a young lady who was in college. And she was taken to him because she was really in bad shape. She had epilepsy. And unfortunately, these seizures were interfering with her ability to drive. So she couldn't get to work anymore. She couldn't drive to school because in the US, if you can't drive, you're basically handicapped. You can't get anywhere unless you live in a big city with the trains. And so she had to drop out of school. She had to quit her job. She was living with her mom, and her aged parents were having to look after her because with these seizures, she was incapacitated. So he gave her some herbs because he realized this is not just seizures, like, something that's randomly mental health. Gave her some traditional Maasai herbs. And after taking it for some time, she went to the bathroom and trigger alert, I wouldn't be too graphic, but she went to the loo and somehow she was using the bathroom. She was doing a number 2 and her bowel movement just kept coming and coming and coming. And she was wondering, this movement isn't getting finished. And then she turned and she saw it was actually a tapeworm. So she screamed and blacked out, like she fainted. She was so shocked. And thankfully the bathroom door was open. Her mom came in with the other lady and they took some tissue or something and they pulled it and pulled it and pulled it. And finally it came out. And that moment she regained consciousness and she never had seizures again. So these stories are not uncommon. When you actually talk to practitioners on the ground, the parasite had been in her lower abdomen. It was pushing on her nerve at the back, and that nerve would now short circuit the brain, and so she would have these seizures. So I'm here to explain to you that a lot of these diseases, even these incurable conditions, quote unquote incurable, when you dig a little bit under the surface, you find that it's actually an infestation And it's something that the good news is it can be remedied. It can actually be remedied. So you have situations like people who have tumors and, they're so worried because they're thinking, oh my goodness, maybe it's the big C, maybe I'm going to die. I'm going to need all these, painful treatments. And unfortunately for some people, that's what they have to do. But a number of them, there's one example, a Mexican lady living in the US, and the video is on YouTube. And she was told she had a brain tumor. And for liability reasons, they do film when they're doing the surgery. So her neurosurgeon, they opened her up and they got the mass. And as they're getting it out, they realize it's a cyst. Inside the cyst, guess what? A worm. So they removed the whole thing. I mean, it was kind of gross, but I mean, she was relieved. After that, no more cancer, no more brain tumors. So one of the things that we have found when we check and we find, okay, this client has this parasite or this type of mold or this bacteria or that. Sorry, I'm out of sound, so I'm using my phone. After you are able to eliminate, destroy the pathogen, then their health really, really does a major comeback. They really bounce back. Same thing has been found with kids. Sometimes you find there was a young boy who had really crazy anger issues. His parents thought maybe it's just puberty, but his mom was like, let me investigate because this is not his personality. He was tearing up stuff. He was tearing up the house. He was screaming. He had to be sent home from school. He couldn't go to school for the past few months. And, it was just insane. So the mother kept pushing for tests and they found out it was pandas, which is caused by a bacteria. So that's another pathogen that was giving him crazy anger issues. But as soon as he was put on treatment for that, he did take antibiotics. Within a week, he was a different boy. So even with these neurological conditions, even with mental health issues, of course, mental health is very broad. There are many causative factors, but we always rule out parasites, especially with anxiety. If a client feels like they're having anxiety in the evening and they also have sugar cravings along with that, we always check for parasites because they like to play at night. They are the root cause behind a lot of insomnia, behavioral issues, etc. So one of the things that I always start my clients with when they come to me for whatever chronic issues especially, is the full life set, the fiber system set. I mean, if they have the budget, we get the whole digestive reset system. Because no matter what the issue is, first we have to reduce the toxic load and remove these squatters. We call them squatters because they're living in your body, they're not paying rent, and they're causing a lot of havoc. So once you get rid of those, we do the cleanse using the fiber system kit. We work on the liver using super detox. The herbs that these practitioners have been using for centuries, they're actually included in the Full Life products. So for example, I spoke of the scientist, Dr. Hulda Clark, who did find that when you get rid of parasites and pathogens, you're actually able to neutralize almost 80% of diseases. So she came up with parasite blends, and they have ingredients like, sorry, someone's not muted. Rosalind, can we ask you to mute? Thank you. Okay. All right. I don't know if Rosalind is able to mute. Because there's some nice music that she's playing for us. We appreciate the background music. Yeah. Okay, so Hulda Clark came up with a list of herbs that are proven to kill parasites and to kill a variety of microbes. These are things that the Native American Indians have been using for many centuries, and they've been used by European indigenous peoples as well. And they are similar to what we use here in Africa. For example, there's black walnut, which is really, really good as an antiparasitic. It's also called Artemisia. It's used in Asia as well. We use it here in Kenya. Those who are from the Kikuyu people, it's called mohato. Those herbs are really good. And then there's cloves in there. There's pau de arco. Those are different antifungals, because the thing about these guys, they all live together in one community. So that's why, for example, if someone has a chronic inflammation, if someone has a chronic complaint of fungus, we wouldn't really start with the fungus per se. We would start with the parasites always, because the parasites are also carrying fungus. They're carrying bacteria. It's like a bus, and they have all these little guys in them. So when you get rid of the parasites first and foremost, you greatly reduce the toxic load, and then the client is much more comfortable, whether they are old or young. Sometimes people ask me, can babies have parasites? And ironically, when we test them using frequency testing, using the bioresonance diagnostic device, we find even little babies. They have these, not too many, but they have them, and you wonder, where do they get them from? Unfortunately, we mothers, when we are having our kids, we give them both the good and the bad. And some of these creatures cross through the placenta. So it's really, really important to always start with detox. Always start with, if someone's old enough to take the fiber system, kids and adults, that's a really beautiful blend, because they're gentle, but they really get a lot out of the system. The other thing, once you start doing a parasite cleanse or getting rid of these guys, they cause constipation because they don't want to die. So their defense mechanism is they secrete chemicals that make you constipated. So it's really good that 4Life has the Phytolax product as well. It's just good to have on hand when we are doing a cleanse, to make sure whatever is coming out just gets all the way out. That's another thing that I like to mention. Those who are in Asia, in Africa, apart from the 4Life herbs, there's also neem. Neem is amazing as a broad spectrum antimicrobial, antifungal, antiparasitic, and it's one of my favorite as well. The other thing about these guys, once you do the fiber system cleanse, which is recommended to do twice a year, and before any client with a chronic complaint begins a course, I personally like to put them on that if they're well enough. That's if their drainage is working well. They're able to have a bowel movement, they're able to sweat, they're able to pee, like all these things are working. Then we give them the 4Life Fiber System Kit or the Digestive Reset. It's a really, really good starting point. If you're not sure, where to start a client, I would always start them with that. Simply because 99% of the case, if you test them, you will find that they have unwanted guests in their system. Does anyone have any questions so far? Questions, comments? This is an open forum. Okay. Anyway, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm going to go back to Hilda Clark, to what she said. In her book, she said, The Cure for All Diseases, she says, no matter how long and confusing, thank you, Sonia. No matter how long and confusing the list of symptoms a person has, I am sure to find only two things wrong: pollutants and or parasites. So we've talked about parasites. And as a bioresonance consultant, I work very closely with a lot of Eastern European doctors, Russian doctors, Lithuanian doctors, Ukrainian doctors, and they're very much on top of this game when it comes to parasites. Like, their countries being communist haven't really had a strong commercial interest from big pharma. So they've always been very plain about what's actually causing these diseases. So it gives me a lot of confidence, because whenever we refer our clients to them to give the doctor's protocols, they're so relaxed, like nothing phases them. You tell them, oh, I have a client and she has, he has a brain tumor, he has this and this, he has stage 4 this and stage 3 that, and it's so dismal. And they're like, oh, okay, that's pretty simple. Just bring them my way. And most of the time, they're always looking at what's behind this, If it's a growth, for example, many of these diseases that deal with growths, we talked of brain tumors. There's things like endometriosis, fibroids. These are, common female issues. Yes, there's hormonal imbalance. Yes, you've got to work on the liver, etc. But often you find that there's pathogens in there. There's things like Epstein-Barr virus that's hiding there. There's things like parasites. These worms we've talked about, toxoplasmosis. And for example, in a healthy uterus, you'll find that once they start to take hold, as they're growing, they're like carrying this little blanket coating, and they're carrying it with them. As they continue growing and growing, they're carrying it like a little tent. So you find that with the endometrial lining, it starts to spread outside the uterus onto other organs. But when you just take a look, you find that there's a root cause. There's some guys there who have set up camp. Some of our clients who come with diabetes, especially type 2, and you do the scan, and it's like, oh, there's some worms on the pancreas. So of course it's not able to secrete insulin. So what do? You kill the worms, and then you strengthen the pancreas, etc. And you give them the 4Life products that are able to get the body functioning. And people with thyroid issues, sometimes you find there's some protozoa or something that's grown on the thyroid. When you get rid of that, you see amazing results. So you're probably wondering, how do you get rid of these guys? Since they are living creatures, how do you get rid of them? We have talked of herbs. Dr. Hulda Clark mentioned that the best way to get rid of them is actually a combination of herbs, which we have in our 4Life products. And we have the molecule, because the molecule sensitizes the body so that it knows exactly where these bad guys are. They operate on stealth. They don't want us to know they're there. And really, to be honest, we were actually designed to coexist with them. It's just now our systems are so overloaded with too much going on. That's why we're struggling. But ideally, we were supposed to coexist with them. So you don't know they're there. You go for a stool test. They're not there. They didn't come out in the stool. They're alive. So they're hiding in the organs and they're holding on to the intestinal lining. They're not going to come out unless they're dead. So, so how do you actually find them? How do you get rid of them? Hulda Clark said, use the herbs, what we have. The molecule that we use also sends the immune system, especially once the herbs have killed them, the molecule will tell the immune system, hey, there's some guys here who are hiding. They were masquerading as us, which is why a lot of allergies have a root cause of parasites, because the body is just like, I know there's something here. I know there's something that doesn't belong here. So it starts to overreact. Anyway, so the molecule does help. And Hulda Clark said, when you use electricity, you use frequencies. So she actually did some experiments. She really did a lot of trial and error, and her son helped her. She was able to find that every living thing has its own signature frequency. So just like the sun sends out a signal, you wake up, you see the sun's rays, the sun is there. It's broadcasting that it's in the sky. You look at the stars, each of them is twinkling. They're like, hey, I'm here. Every living thing has its own frequency. So whether it's microscopic like a virus, whether it's a human, whether it's a baby, she said a baby has like a frequency of 9 million hertz or something. She made a list, and the list is there in the internet public domain, and other scientists picked up on that work. Every creature has its own frequency. She was focusing on the big 5, these pathogens. So for example, a roundworm has its own frequency. Borrelia bacteria has this frequency. A cold has, and it's like, maybe 457 hertz. So when you actually test and you hear, you get the frequency of this pathogen, then you know exactly what's in there. So it's like when you're giving a speech at a place, maybe you're in the audience or the speaker, he's testing the mic and you hear feedback. That feedback isn't supposed to be there. You switch it off. So with bioresonance or frequency testing, when you come with the frequency of, for example, adenovirus, which causes colds, and you check it with the client, then if that virus is there, it pings back, like that microphone, the feedback, ping, then aha, it's there. And Hulda Clark found that if you invert that frequency and feed the same frequency of that virus to the person or the animal, you can do this with horses, with cats, with dogs, then within 3 minutes or so, you check, it's no longer there. It kills it, yeah? Just the same way you have these whistles that we can't hear them, but the dogs can, and it makes them go crazy. Those don't harm the dogs, but they do make them a bit uncomfortable. So when you use frequency testing and when you use frequencies to kill and destroy these pathogens, then it becomes very, very easy to add on the herbs that we have from 4Life and the transfer factor as well. And then, of course, we rebuild the immune system, we rebuild the gut, and then you're able to achieve optimal health. So does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay. Another question that people ask is, but why are we having these parasites? Like, seriously, why are they there? Because they're such a nuisance. Well, basically parasites are there to clean up. They're the cleanup guys. And like I said, initially, our ancestors were not as toxic as we are. So they were not perfect hosts like we are nowadays. So if in your backyard, maybe you are eating a hot dog and you left your hot dog there, you haven't touched it, somebody called you in the house, you left it there on the grass. Give it a couple of days, a day or two. What will happen? What will you find? Will you find the hot dog intact? Maria? Yeah, I see everyone shaking their heads. Obviously, you will find that they're your little helpers from your garden, from your yard, who have come to help you to clean up. So maybe it will be a bigger creature like a raccoon who comes and grabs it, or a badger, or a neighborhood cat. Once they've taken the majority, whatever is left there, you'll find maybe the ants have come for it. And whatever the ants have left, you might find some mold has grown on them to get rid of that. So our systems were surrounded with, there's EMF frequencies, e-smog, that's, a kind of toxin. We have chemicals, we have endocrine disruptors, we have cleaning materials, we have perfumes, we have all kinds of things that are making our systems toxic. We have GMO food, we have processed food, we have medical remnants from, medications we've taken. There's all kinds of stuff. Plus there's emotional toxins, that also weakens us. So obviously we are going to have a lot more cleanup guys in our system trying to get a handle on these toxins. And that's why we find we are prone more to have these parasites and to have these pathogens. Going back to some of these female issues, when we find that there's some kind of a cyst, some growth, some tumor, whether it's fibroids or endo, really what the immune system has done is they found a guy, the cells, the cells who are responsible, the watchmen who go, the security guys, they found an intruder. And they weren't really able to have all the resources needed to destroy and eliminate and neutralize that intruder. So what they did, they cordoned it off, the way police have a yellow sign that says police do not cross, and they cordon off the area. Sure, I'll get to her question. She can type it in the chat. So they cordon off the area and they insist the invader, they cover it up so that when the immune system is strong enough, it will send reinforcements and get rid of whoever is inside there. So that's why so many times when people have tumors and things removed or growths, when there's a biopsy done, they find that some of these guys were there, some of these bad boys were in there. And the beauty of using frequencies to destroy them is that the frequencies are able to destroy them uninvasively. Like it just slowly keeps on hitting that, growth or that congregation of, invaders until they are able to disappear and the body is able to get rid of them through the normal drainage channels. Again, like I mentioned, these guys are very, very intelligent. Not like they have brains or anything, but they're just well adapted to survival. So they create something called biofilms. And the biofilms are like a shield, like the Roman shield, where I think you remember the image of how the Romans would come, they would besiege a city, and then they would all have their shields and the infantry would all cover themselves, and then it becomes like a big elephant. And whoever is trying to shoot arrows at them from the city, the arrows would just ricochet off because they're covered with this. So biofilms are created by pathogens and parasites to protect them from the immune system and from any herbs, from any antibiotics as well. So how do we get rid of the biofilms? Well, again, frequencies help a lot in destroying biofilms. There are things called proteolytic enzymes, things like nattokinase, serrapeptase. They're just enzymes that help to digest food, but they also digest these little fortresses or nests so that when we're taking the 4-Life products, the transfer factor, it's able to get in there and get rid of them. Some of the herbs do help to break down the biofilms because they help to open up the way that these guys can be removed. So definitely, I do recommend that we take, the digestive reset kit and whatever we have available. I highly recommend that if possible, look into frequency medicine as well. There are little handheld devices that you can use at home. J. Michael has one, a bunch of folks have them. They're very, very helpful because frequencies are able to destroy all these things without harming, regardless of the age. Maria, I see your hand is up. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm sorry I can't put my camera on, but I have a question. So are the parasites related to like asthma and allergies and acid reflux? My question is because I'm going myself to a process that in the past year I'm having so they send me to different specialists, right? They said I have asthma, they say I have allergies, that I get like a strep throat, my voice will change. So recently, just actually today, I was reading about the acid reflux. But my question to you is, does the parasite can be related to all of this?
Great question. Yeah, so from what I've seen in clinical practice, definitely. Like, that's just the first thing we rule out. I mentioned to you earlier, those who are here at the beginning, about this naturopathic practitioner, Dr. Richard Saningo, and how he used his indigenous wisdom as a Maasai herbalist and his naturopathic training from the US, and he was able to get to the root cause of so many issues. And he's the first one who told me, I mean, this is more than 10 years ago. And he told me, yeah, you have asthma. That's parasites. In fact, he gave me the exact worm that is linked to asthma, and it is Ascaris. The worm is called Ascaris. It's a type of roundworm. And the disease is called ascariasis because somehow we get the larva, maybe in food. Sometimes you eat an apple, it's not been washed, or you pet a dog, or maybe you are grounding outside or playing outside, you stepped on, some grass that previously a cat had pooped, and you get the little larva and it gets into your gut and it grows, it goes up to the lungs, and then there it becomes a full-fledged worm. And they love the lungs because the lungs are very rich in oxygen. So Maria, when he told me this, I was so disgusted. Oh my goodness, like I didn't sleep for a few days. And I didn't even go back to him. I was like, how can this man tell me that I have worms? Oh my goodness. But it's true. And we find every case of asthma has ascariasis or the roundworms, which is why the frequency devices, like I'm wearing one here. Wangeshi is the one who introduced me to them. She's here in this meeting. When we get our doctor's protocols, where they program these devices according to what exactly we are struggling with individually, they make you custom complexes. Under my asthma complex, I find this drainage, this blah, 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 all those things to strengthen my body, and ascarids. There's a program to kill the ascarids, because once you get rid of them, you kill them, you're able to breathe a lot better. Yes, asthma, it's life-threatening. You want to control it with the inhaler and all that. But when you get to the root cause, let me tell you, this Russian doctor who's made my protocol, she's the one who introduced me to transfer factor. She made the protocol for the asthma and she said, use these frequencies, but go and look for life transfer factor, because every single patient who I have treated using bioresonance and transfer factor has gone into remission from autoimmune conditions. And that was powerful. I mean, I Googled, I found for life. That's how I got in. So yeah, definitely check into that. If you like, I can connect you with that doctor very easily. You can PM me. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because autoimmunity, that's like a buzzword we're hearing today. Oh, autoimmune this, autoimmune that. And I'm not diminishing that. They cause a lot of suffering, these autoimmune illnesses. We get things like asthma, like that's what I had from childhood, lupus, fibromyalgia, Crohn's, like what Dave had. Yes, these things are autoimmune, and the system tells you that your body is fighting itself. I am here to tell you today for free, your body does not fight itself. It does not. Our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made. They have so much inherent wisdom. The body does not just wake up and start fighting itself. Autoimmunity is actually toxicity and parasites / pathogens. So what happens is I'm an immune cell on this side, and my buddy is on that side, and we are in the same army, we're in the infantry, and we are, fighting as hard as we can to keep Trisha alive. But there are so many bad guys. Like, we are overwhelmed by all the bad guys. There's bacteria, there's viruses, there's mold, there's worms, and there's only a few of us. So as we're trying to hit these guys, we end up hitting our own tissues. We end up doing what is called friendly fire. You're like, oops, that wasn't what I was planning to do. So when we reduce the pathogens, when you kill the parasites, when you get rid of the toxins, including toxins that the parasites themselves have produced, because they're busy pooping, peeing, getting married, having babies, producing ammonia, metabolizing it, all that rubbish, your body also has to process it in addition to your own metabolic waste. So there's a lot of gunk in there. So the immune system is just battling for dear life. And unfortunately, our own tissues get damaged. But once we're able to reduce, detox, remove these pollutants, remove the parasites, and then educate our immune system with transfer factor to modulate the immune response, then you find these autoimmune issues are able to go into remission. A lot of them are to do with parasites, to do with Epstein-Barr, to do with other guys in there, because they're all like in one soup. So the beauty of Huda Clark with her frequencies, when she goes for one or two of them, when you hit them with a couple of the frequencies, a lot of other guys also die. So that's a good thing. I hope I've answered your question, Maria. Maria, can you hear me? I hope I've answered your question. So, yeah, okay, I see your answer, yes. So, just in summary, what have we learned today? Again, I want to thank you for spending time on your Saturday with me. I just wanted to share my own experience in how I've been able to really, really optimize my own health, the health of my family members, and of the clients who I'm privileged to serve in my wellness clinic. From the wisdom that we have learned and from personal experience, I have learned that 80%, and that's a statistic that the Russians came up with, or the Eastern Europeans, 80% of illnesses, common diseases, and even the very uncommon one with fancy names, especially the ones named after people, those ones that are so-and-so syndrome, XYZ, if it's a syndrome, that means they don't know what's causing it. So they give it a fancy name named after some dude, and they call it a syndrome. Dig deeper, look behind the label, and you'll find it's just one of these creatures who usually is supposed to be friendly and coexist with us, but things have gotten out of hand. So when you tackle those, doing the parasite cleanse, doing the detox, strengthening your drainage, strengthening your immune system, educating your immune system, and if possible, if it's within your reach, using frequencies, then you're able to optimize the health of your family, and you're able to go from feeling stressed to feeling relaxed. Thank you so much. J. Michael, are you the co-host? I can give it to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Tricia. Appreciate you always. You're a wealth of information. I learn from you every time I talk to you and chat with you. And this has been fantastic. I took some notes, and we did record this, so this will be put into our YouTube channels and some of our other channels. If you want to come back to this or share this with your colleagues or share this with your clients or friends, you'll be able to share this video. But thank you so much, Tricia, for taking the evening out of your Saturday. Early evening there, so you still got some time, but appreciate you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and just say that we do this Saturday training for Health Talk every single Saturday at this time, and you can see it if you're in some of our WhatsApp groups when this is available and what the topic is. I think Tricia has just informed us with some great information with parasites and pathogens. So thank you so much, Tricia. Thank you all of you that have joined us today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. I see a lot of people from all over the world. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday with your valuable time. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday and a great weekend. We'll say goodbye for now. Thank you again.